By the end of the week, the HOA's empire had collapsed like wet paper. Karen's arrest made local news first, then regional. By Friday, it hit national feeds under the headline, "Fake HOA Enforcer Caught Running $300K Fine Scheme Stopped by Ranch Owner's Federal Waterway Rights." Reporters showed up at my gate wanting interviews, but I kept quiet. I didn't need fame. I just wanted peace. The real victory came when the county court declared the HOA had no authority over federal waterways or the surrounding ranch property. Every illegal fine was voided, and anyone who paid got full refunds from Karen's seized assets. The day the deputies came to remove the HOA's illegal private property signs from the lake, the neighbors gathered around. Old Henley gave me a pat on the shoulder. "You did good, son," he said. "We've lived under her fear for years." I watched as the signs hit the dirt, one by one. The air smelled cleaner, freer somehow. My wife stood beside me, smiling for the first time in months. The kids were skipping rocks on the water, our water, and no one could stop them. Later that night, Sheriff Daniels dropped by one last time. "You know," he said, leaning on the fence, "you could have lost everything if you hadn't known your rights." I chuckled. "Guess it pays to read the small print." He nodded, eyes on the calm lake. "She thought power meant control. You proved it means knowing where it ends." Karen was sentenced to 5 years for fraud, impersonation, and extortion. The HOA dissolved soon after. My lake, once a battlefield, turned into a symbol of freedom. Neighbors hosting cookouts, kids fishing, laughter echoing off the water. I built a small wooden sign by the dock that said, "Public water, private courage." Because sometimes, standing up doesn't take an army, just the guts to say enough.
By the next morning, word spread faster than wind across the lake. The HOA queen had finally tripped over her own crown. Sheriff Daniels' team towed the fake inspector's truck straight to the county impound lot, and the evidence they pulled from it painted a story worse than anyone guessed. Inside the boxes were hundreds of environmental fines, pre-filled with resident names, all demanding payments for supposed water contamination. Each one had a fake state seal and a P.O. box registered under Karen's name. The local paper got wind of it before noon. "HOA board accused of running fake fine scheme," the headline read. Karen must have seen it too, because her SUV appeared again that afternoon. This time, her confidence was gone. She sat in the driver's seat, window half down, watching his deputies catalog the files from her so-called inspection team. When Daniels walked over, she didn't even argue. "You don't understand," she whispered. "The HOA never gives me funding. I had to improvise." "By impersonating state inspectors?" he asked. Karen's voice cracked. "They wanted results. I gave them results." Meanwhile, a neighbor I barely knew, old Mr. Henley, came walking down the slope carrying an envelope. "Got one of these last week," he said, handing it to Daniels. "Said I owed $1,200 for chemical runoff. I don't even own fertilizer." Dozens more residents followed, each holding letters just like it. Some had already paid. Others were too scared to. It was chaos, people angry, shouting, relieved, all at once. The HOA president showed up red-faced, swearing he had no idea Karen was using their name. Daniels didn't say much. He just opened one of the envelopes, pointed to the routing number at the bottom, and said quietly, "That account belongs to Karen, not the HOA." That broke everything. She tried one last play, claiming the money was for community maintenance, that she meant to reimburse the HOA later, but when the deputies showed her the deposit slips with her signature, her excuses fell apart. The real twist came when Daniel's deputy returned from checking the county database. Karen wasn't even authorized to act for the HOA anymore. She'd been voted out months ago, but never told anyone. That meant every fine, every fake citation, every threat she had issued was illegal from the start. I stood by the dock as they cuffed her, the wind rippling over the lake that had started this mess. She looked at me once, eyes hollow, and said, "You ruined everything." I shook my head. "No, Karen, you did." That night, the sheriff called. "You might want to keep those federal documents close. This is going to get bigger before it settles." And he was right. The HOA's entire leadership was about to face the fallout.
2 days later, the quiet of the lake broke again. Not from ducks or kids playing, but from the sounds of engines and voices shouting about inspection rights. Karen had returned, this time with 2 men in neon vests and clipboards that looked official from far away. Their truck had a magnetic decal reading Environmental Safety Division. She stood behind them, grinning like she'd brought the cavalry. "Sir," one of them said stiffly, "we've had reports that you're illegally altering a shared water source. We're here to perform a contamination assessment." I almost laughed. A contamination of what? Sunshine? Karen crossed her arms, smug. "They have authority, you know. This lake connects to community irrigation lines. If he's polluting it, we can seize access under the HOA's emergency clause." Before I could respond, the sheriff's truck rolled up the gravel road again. He stepped out, slow, hand resting casually near his belt. "Afternoon, folks. Got a call about some kind of inspection?" Karen jumped in before the men could answer. "Yes, Sheriff. These officials are from the Environmental Division. They're here because he's been dumping chemicals into the lake." Sheriff Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" He walked over to their truck, bent to read the decal closely, and smirked. "Funny, this agency doesn't exist in the state registry." The men stiffened. One tried to play it off. "We're subcontractors." Daniels held up a hand. "Sure you are. IDs, please." They exchanged nervous glances. Karen's fake confidence started to crack. "You don't need to do this," she blurted out. "They're working with the HOA." "That's the problem, ma'am. The HOA doesn't outrank the federal code." He checked their badges, both laminated fakes printed on cheap stock. "You know, you two know impersonating an officer is a felony, right?" The taller man swallowed hard. "Look, we didn't—" Karen told us it was a private job. That was it. The entire game fell apart right there on the gravel. Daniels turned to her, his tone sharp now. "You hired them?" Karen's face went blank. I didn't hire—" I cut in. "You paid them. They came in through my north gate. My security cameras caught everything." Daniels sighed and spoke into his radio, calling for backup. "We're going to need a fraud unit out here. Looks like our HOA just expanded its jurisdiction a little too far." Karen tried to bolt, but one deputy blocked her path. For a long moment, nobody said a word. The fake inspectors just stood there, looking at the ground. Then Daniels turned to me. "You might have uncovered something bigger than a nosy neighbor," he said quietly. And when the deputy opened the back of their truck, we found what he meant. Boxes full of fake citations, HOA seals, and blank environmental fines. Karen wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was running a full-blown racket. Karen wasn't the type to back down. Not when she had an audience. She stormed toward the dock, her flip-flops slapping the wet boards like gavel strikes. "You can't just hide behind fancy paperwork," she snapped. "This lake has always belonged to the HOA." The sheriff, a patient man named Daniels, raised a brow and motioned for the papers I held. He scanned the coordinates on my deed, then pulled out his phone. "Let's see here," he muttered, tapping into the Federal Registry. A moment later, he glanced up, and his expression changed from confusion to faint amusement. "Ma'am," he said, "this property line's accurate. The lake is classified as a federal waterway, not HOA land. That means your rules don't apply here." Karen's jaw dropped. "That's impossible," she barked. "We maintain the trails. We clean the edges." I couldn't help it. I chuckled. "You mow the grass. That doesn't make you the Navy." A few of the neighbors laughed under their breath. That only fueled her rage. "You're trespassing on our lake," she yelled again, pointing wildly. Sheriff Daniels sighed. "Ma'am, the only one trespassing right now is you. The federal code overrides any HOA bylaw. You step foot past this dock again, you could be fined for obstruction." Karen's face went pale. and for the first time, she didn't have words. Her phone slipped slightly in her hand. That's when she tried a new angle. "This can't be right," she muttered. "You must have forged those documents. Nobody can just buy a lake." I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped open the title company's confirmation, and turned the screen toward her. "Bought it from the county, sealed and registered. The dam upstream collapsed 20 years ago. The HOA never filed for rights because they never had any. It reverted to public, and now it's mine." Her glare could have melted ice. "You'll regret this," she hissed, storming back toward her SUV. Daniels watched her go and murmured, "Something tells me she's not done." He was right. I saw her stop halfway up the road, grab her phone, and start snapping pictures of my dock, my house, even my truck. And I knew that look. She wasn't calling a lawyer this time. She was calling reinforcements.
They came like they owned the shoreline. Karen at the front, waving a laminated HOA notice like it was a warrant, neighbors clustered behind her, phones out, and a sheriff's cruiser idling at the road because someone already dialed 911. "You can't use that lake," she yelled, pointing at my dock where my kids were dangling their feet. "That water is community property. You put a boat in there, you'll pay fines, or we'll have you removed." The spray from the lake glittered in the sun while her voice tried to sound like law. I stayed where I was, hands loose at my sides, because I knew two things she didn't. First, the parcel I bought included the old lake bed deeded clear to me. Second, that stretch of water was listed as a federally navigable waterway on the Corps of Engineers maps, meaning state or HOA claims could be blocked by federal law. I walked up, held out the county deed and a faded Corps map, and said, calm as a judge, "You don't get to call 911 to enforce private fantasies. This is federal jurisdiction. One call from me, and your notices look like toilet paper." Karen's smile cracked. She barked about calling her lawyer, but the sheriff glanced at the maps, then at his radio, and for the first time, the crowd shifted. Phones kept recording, and one line cut through the fuss like a headline. "You called the cops on a lake I legally own. Good luck arguing with federal codes."